All right. I was supposed to go to bed because I gotta wake up at 7 a.m. tomorrow to take the train. But this idea is not leaving me, so let's just try to record something here for a video. Um, First off, I think, if this makes it into the final cut, screw any semblance of trying to maintain like a professional YouTube channel and repertoire of YouTube videos at this stage. I've got like 6 videos, so I don't think it really matters. And I think the more important thing is that I make stuff and that it's honest. So here's this video here to try and do that. Okay, now to the actual thing I wanted to talk about. It's this idea of, let's say you're trying to learn a new skill, or you're trying to improve from where you are now. So, like any normal person, you would decide to just go on YouTube and search up information about the skill or videos or like tutorials, how to improve and things like that. But one of the dangers of YouTube, and I think the internet in general, is that there's no real filtering, right? You kind of just have open access to whatever you can find, which is on one hand great. It's, an advantage that we have now that previous generations would have probably killed for. But, with that ability comes some dangers, right? Because there's no filtering or access restriction, you can sort of stumble into areas where you're not ready for, or that might be kind of too much information for you to take in at that stage that you're at. It's kind of like in video games where you have areas of the map that are blocked off due to level. And so it's like you got to be, reach a certain level, right? You got to get to like level 50 to go into the swamp or whatever, or if you have like those like skill books, it's like, oh, you can only learn this skill once you're like level 70. You can kind of think of it like that, right? There's kind of a reason for that. So for me, the skill that I was looking at developing further is my drawing, getting better at drawing, maybe learning to do some coloring, better composition, shading, anatomy, things like that. And, I found some videos. I watched this one video that I actually really liked, where it was one guy talking about how he basically tracked his time from 0 to drawing and illustrating for over 10,000 hours. I think he had like 11,700 something. And so this guy was kind of describing his journey and how he felt at different stages of the process, at different like groups of thousands of hours, and, reflecting on what his mindset was like and what he was kind of mistaken about. And that video is great. I think it's really inspiring, and it's just like an honest sharing of I think, reality. Like if you're trying to do the 10,000 hour journey, it's a good reference point of like what it would look like. But then I watched another video, I think recommended from that one, or some train of recommendations, about another guy who I think he had said he had drawn for like 3 years, and then he was sharing his progress. And that one, I think, it activated me kind of like in a negative emotional way. And that's partly because, for me, I've been drawing for 4 years now, and I've been pretty casual, but, it's one of those ego things where you kind of, if you just look at yourself, you think you're pretty good. And if you tend to, suffer from pride like I do, you might even think like, oh, you're like better than, other people who don't put in effort to learn skills or what have you. Something like that, I don't know. But basically, I thought it was like pretty hot shit. But then I watched this video of this guy who had been drawing for 3 years, and he He got to a point where he was like way better than, where I'm at. That might just be my mind filling in the blanks in a negative way, but I think he had like skills that I wanted and admired and do not have right now, like coloring and like digital art ability and composition and things like that. And yeah, that did not feel super good. But then you find out about halfway through the video that in his first year of drawing, he drew for an average of 6 hours a day for a total of 2,200 hours. 2,200 hours in just his first year of drawing. Meanwhile, for me, I've been averaging about, drawing every other day, 30 minutes a day. And I'm at just under 350 hours for my 4 years of drawing. This is why you shouldn't compare yourself to people on the internet. And I think another thing I've been thinking about with this kind of like, quote unquote, like dangerous content is that it can kind of like kill ideas if the ideas are too young. It's like, let's say I could be like some person who wants to learn art and just have like no skills. And then I go and look up a video on like how to draw a head. And then someone like, introduces the Loomis method or like a bunch of other complicated things. And then I just get overwhelmed and I'm like, okay, this is too much. I'm just going to not try the thing. There's that risk, right? And you can have that class of example or like a similar experience at like different levels of skill, right? It's like, okay, maybe you're level 10, but then you look at some like level 50 content and you're like, oh my God, like I don't even know how the dots connect to like get to that point. Like there's so much skill gap difference that like it's just incomprehensible and it's like out of reach, right? So there's things like that where it's another thing to be mindful of is like your babies can get killed. And so, yeah, I don't know, just with this kind of thing, like part of me, I kind of always oscillate between loving the internet and being on it and watching a ton of videos and gaining knowledge, and also maybe like feeding this like negative feedback loop. I don't know. It's probably a mix of all those things, but I oscillate between like wanting to be on the internet and like consuming these things, and then just like wanting to be off the internet entirely and just kind of like squirreled away in my own hidey hole and kind of trusting my own internal motivation and just like working on something in the quiet and without any like disturbance, good or bad, and then sort of like emerging. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's dangerous out there. What am I trying to say? Yeah, just remember, I guess if you're learning a new skill or developing a skill, just beware of the kind of flood that exists on the internet, and there's like no floodgates. Oh, and then if you do kind of like run into this phenomenon of getting overwhelmed, one thing I found that helps is just getting out of your own head and getting back to kind of your reality. And so for me, that means like just, doing the work, like doing a drawing and like remembering, oh yeah, like I can still do this. This is like my ability. I still feel good about it. Like that hasn't really changed. And then when you're drawing, when you're doing the thing, it's pretty clear to you like what the immediate growth edges are, right? Like you can see the incremental places that you can improve, because that's just how like doing this kind of thing works. And that is, pretty grounding, and it gets you back to like the sort of bottoms up approach approach of like, okay, this is where I'm at. This is what I need to do tomorrow. Yeah. The last point I was thinking about was like, take a second to think like, what do we actually, when we, like you or I, search for these kind of videos, like what are we actually looking for, right? And like sometimes it's actual just pure information, filling in holes we don't know. But I think sometimes it's also like looking for shortcuts, or commiserating, or wanting to be seen and perceived, and knowing that you're not alone in like the struggle that you're going through. So to that I say, I see you. You are not alone. The struggle is real. I'm struggling. You're struggling. Everyone's struggling. But I think both you and I know that the only way out is through, and just by doing the work, that's the only way to improve, and no one can do that for us. So, yeah, let's get back to work.